This video is sponsored by Incogni. Let's face it, even the most beloved of series, the ones that are cherished, praised, and endlessly rewatched, almost always have at least that one stinker of an episode. That one episode in an otherwise decent show, which for whatever reason just didn't hit the mark. Be it characters acting out of character, a plot which makes no sense, the humour not hitting its mark, or the writers taking a gamble which just didn't pay off. Whatever the reasons, it just makes you want to skip. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down 5 of the worst episodes from otherwise great cartoons. Now, quick note, for long-running series like The Simpsons or Spongebob, where the later seasons really dropped off a cliff, I'm only going to be pulling episodes from what is considered the show's golden era, in which you'll see highlighted in the yellow text below. So if you're wondering why a bad episode you can think of, such as Lisa Goes Gaga or The Splinter, aren't on here, check the season it was released before leaving an angry comment. But before we get started, a quick shout out from this video's sponsor, Incogni. More than ever, the internet is filled with shady companies and individuals who are trying to access your personal data. I personally experienced a lot of this with spam emails, scam callers, and even unwanted posts to my address. That's why it's important to use a service such as Incogni. Incogni is a personal data removal service which automatically removes personal information related to you from public websites and private databases. It does so by regularly sending requests to data brokers on your behalf because, interestingly enough, records tend to reappear even once they've been removed. When available, Incogni will also ask data brokers to add your profile to their suppression lists to make sure that your name is never listed again. This is all included in their unlimited and family unlimited plans, not only allowing protection to your family, who may be more susceptible to this, dad, but also giving you an extra layer of protection because if you share a mailbox, address, or home phone number, you can still be receiving their spam. Head over to incogni.com/reviews and use code REVIEWS to get an exclusive offer of 60% off. That's incogni.com/reviews and using the code REVIEWS. Thank you Incogni for sponsoring this video. Now back to the review. The Simpsons, My Sister, My Sitter, Season 8, Episode 17. This is the episode which made Bart incredibly unlikable. In this episode, Lisa becomes a babysitter and finds out that she's really good at it, getting high praise from the townfolk and earning a lot of money in the process. Bart notices this and starts to become jealous, but things don't really escalate until Homer and Marge head out into town and assign Lisa to babysit Bart and Maggie. Now, I can see a decision like this coming from Homer, but for Marge it seems a little out of character. She's well aware of what Bart's behaviour can be like, and has even seen firsthand what he's done with previous babysitters. So for her to be so nonchalant about just leaving Lisa alone with him does feel a little off for her.
This is the greatest injustice in the history of the world! Well, we have to run. I'm sure you kids will work things out. Good night.
Bart doesn't take too well to Lisa being in charge and starts causing all sorts of mischief and mayhem to make Lisa's life as hard as possible. But things soon get out of hand and he ends up falling down the stairs where he breaks his arm and gets a nasty bump on the head. Now you think this would be a turning point in the episode where Bart realizes that he's taken things too far, but no. Instead he ends up doubling down, trying to make his injuries even worse, just to guarantee that Lisa will never be able to work as a babysitter again.
Oh no! I'm going to preserve the evidence until Mom and Dad get home. And you'll never babysit again!
Eventually Bart manages to knock himself out, so Lisa tries to call the hospital, but they think this is another hoax as Bart had been prank calling them earlier that night. She thinks about taking him to the hospital on foot, but is scared that everyone will find out what happened and will forbid her from babysitting ever again. So she takes him to Dr. Nick's surgery, where we get this joke which absolutely flew over my head as a child.
Could we possibly go ahead of you?
No, I really would rather get this taken care of.
With Dr. Nick's surgery already being full, she reluctantly decides to wheel Bart to the hospital, but is unfortunately discovered en route and at the very event Marge and Homer were attending. Everyone is horrified by what they witness, and the whole incident is blamed on Lisa for being a bad babysitter. Now, I know Lisa can be a little bit of an annoying character at times, but even this episode felt like it was being a little too cruel to her. Maybe if Lisa had been provoking Bart more by being really condescending and bossing him around, perhaps that would have somewhat justified his reaction, but she didn't really provoke him at all. The episode does kind of have a saving grace at the end where it's shown that people are still willing to hire Lisa, as it's tough to find babysitters in the area, but the episode as a whole still feels really painful to watch. Lisa getting treated unnecessarily cruel, Bart being far too unlikable, and not really getting any consequences for his actions as he's treated like the victim. Sure, he gives a quick apology to Lisa, but I think she's a little too soft for forgiving him. Plus, as someone who's previously broken their arm, seeing Bart wiggling it about like that always makes me wince in my skin.
Want to see what a responsible babysitter you were?
Ugh. Ed, Edd, and Eddy. My Fair Ed, Season 3, Episode 16. The episode where Double D gets really unfairly treated. The episode's premise involves Eddy chasing Ed around the cul-de-sac with a piece of broccoli, causing chaos and damage in the process. The other kids get annoyed by this, but rather than confront Ed and Eddy directly, they decide to put the responsibility solely on Double D, despite him having nothing to do with it, on the pure excuse that because they are his friends, he is the one responsible for them.
Now, let's all remain calm. We've had it with your troublemaking pals.
Which, one, is really dumb, and two, if we're talking about who's responsible for who, shouldn't more responsibility fall on Sarah, seeing as how she's actually Ed's sister? But what makes this suck even more is that out of the three Eds, Double D is the one who tends to hold the moral compass, often expressing shame, guilt, and even regret at some of Eddy's scams. And because of this, I'd say that out of the three Eds, Double D is seen as the most likable by the other kids, as they will often be politer to him, invite him to their activities at times, with even Kevin showing moments of kindness to him. So it really comes across as quite jarring when we see him getting unfairly treated, not just by the other kids, but also Ed and Eddy as well, who show no real concern over the fact that Double D has been beaten and threatened, with Double D only managing to convince Eddy to change, not out of guilt, but rather that Eddy's scams wouldn't work without Double D's help.
Ed can surely help you with your plethora of scams, painting signs, thereby misspelling them, and decreasing your sucker quotient.
So after undergoing some training and discipline, Double D manages to successfully condition Ed and Eddy into better citizens. But unfortunately it goes too far, and Ed and Eddy begin to overreact in their efforts to be better people. And once again, the neighborhood kids turn their blame on Double D, even though it was them who made him do this in the first place.
You better put the kibosh on those dorks, or you'll be so sorry. They won't listen to me,
Double D is left feeling really down, not only because the training has failed, but also the fact that he's lost his old friends, which, considering they were happy to let him take the RAF before, were they really that great of friends? Anyway, it turns out Ed and Eddy had been pranking Double D the entire time and faked the whole ordeal. Which, what the fuck? You knew Double D had already got beaten up and threatened by the other kids, so your response to that was just to further antagonize them, knowing it would lead to Double D getting beat up yet again? Yeah, great friends you got there, Double D. So Double D reacts by chasing Ed and Eddy with another piece of broccoli, in which doing so causes them to knock Kevin off his bike. And the episode ends with Double D having to hide away inside of his house while Kevin goes to confront him. This is just a Double D torture episode that just seems cruel for the sake of cruel. It's not only bad enough that Double D is blamed for something that isn't his fault, but the episode plays it out as though it was Double D's idea to force Ed and Eddy into change.
Oh, Eddy, I'm so sorry. I've done something wrong. I should never have tried to change who you and Ed are.
Like, why is either one apologizing to Ed and Eddy for doing this, even though he only did it because he was getting threatened by the other kids?
Eddy, Kevin said he's going to do this to my legs.
And then at the end, when Double D quite rightly wants to take some vengeance for being made a fool out of, the episode punishes him once again whilst Ed and Eddy run free. Yeah, this was a really weak entry into what is otherwise a fantastic series. Adventure Time. Water Park Prank, Season 6, Episode 37. This is a bit of a unique episode, as it was guest animated and directed by David Ferguson. And right off the bat you will notice the drastic change of art style used in this episode. And I'm gonna say it, I don't like it. I appreciate that art is subjective and that this brings a whole new aesthetic to the show, but it really doesn't work for me. The animation is incredibly limited, the facial expressions are just really creepy, and the whole thing is very abstract. It feels like you're watching that European version of Itchy and Scratchy. I actually think that this style could have maybe worked if there was no dialogue in the episode, or if the characters just spoke in complete gibberish, and perhaps have a quirky musical score to help really lean into the abstract design. But this aesthetic with the characters talking in their regular voices just doesn't blend well at all. And yeah, speaking of the dialogue, even that feels off. Like, characters are over talking / narrating every thought and feeling they're having, like it's a show made for toddlers.
I may have stinky dog breath, but at least I don't have to concern myself with underwear.
And is it me? Or does Princess Bubblegum just sound a little off in this episode?
Well done for remembering your underwear, Finn.
The pacing also just feels really clunky. There's this little side plot where Finn has to run home to get a change of clothes and encounters these characters who are sad because they're covered in these little sad heads. So him and Princess Bubblegum are trying to remove them, but then Finn also gets caught up in them too. It's just so boring, drags on way too long, and contributes nothing to the overall story. Honestly feels like it was a last minute addition just to pad out the runtime. And the main plot itself isn't anything to write home about either. Finn and Jake are pranking the Ice King on the water slide. Jake inflates himself on the slide, which means the Ice King keeps getting bounced back up to the start. The Ice King keeps trying to go down, and the lifeguard gets increasingly frustrated with him before kicking him out of the park. That's the plot. Which, by this point in the series, it had been well established in the show's lore about the Ice King's background and his tragic story of being an ordinary person who was corrupted and driven mad by the crown. And as a result, in more recent seasons, he would be written and treated more sympathetically. Here, however, the way he's treated feels much more like a season 1 episode, back when he was seen as a more one-dimensional villain. So yeah, unless you're really into this different art style, there's nothing much else here. Thankfully, this was the only time in the series that this style was used, though it did make a very brief blink and you'll miss it cameo in the Fiona and Cake episode, Cheers. Regular show, Do Me a Solid, Season 2, Episode 18. The one where Rigby was a right prick. This episode revolves around Mordecai and Rigby doing solids for each other, which basically, a solid translates to doing someone a favour, only with debt. So if you ask someone to do a solid for you, you are now obliged to do them a solid in the future.
Hey Mordecai, do me a solid and get me a lemonade from the kitchen.
Okay, but you owe me a solid.
Of course, that's how solids work.
Mordecai asks Rigby to do him a solid, where he'll agree to go on a double date with Eileen, so that Mordecai can go on a date with Margaret. Rigby reluctantly accepts, but only on the condition that Mordecai will owe him 10 solids in return. Now, considering up to this point in the episode, solids have been pretty minor tasks, such as folding socks, changing the channel, passing the remote, cheesing nachos, etc., it really didn't seem like that bad of a deal for Mordecai to take up. But Rigby really steps up the game for what is required from a solid. And worse, does it in a malicious way so that all the solids Mordecai does are designed to ruin the date between him and Margaret.
Take the heat for what? Sorry everybody.
And when Mordecai confronts him about why he's trying so hard to ruin his date, Rigby doubles down and responds with,
Why are you using your solids to ruin my date with Margaret?
Why'd you use your solid to ruin my life?
Quit being a baby.
Like, Rigby, you didn't have to go on a date with Eileen. You could have just said no. You accepted Mordecai's offer and have been getting much more value from your solids than he has of yours. So what's your problem here? I know early seasons Rigby could be much more of an arse, but even this seems cruel by his usual standards. It all accumulates in Rigby giving one last solid, which he whispers into Mordecai's ear. Mordecai refuses to do it, as apparently it is so out there that it alone would count as the whole 10 solids. And in true regular show fashion, this then starts to cause the fabric of the universe to rip apart, as you absolutely have to owe your debt in solids. Now I know I shouldn't be thinking too hard about the workings of this show, but doesn't that seem like a little bit of a broken system that you can literally ask for whatever you want, no matter how extreme, just to repay a solid? Like, shouldn't there be an unwritten system where both solids need to be of somewhat equal value? Mordecai even states that this one solid is worth at least 10.
He asked me to do one that was worth like 10 solids.
What was it? Wow, that's crazy.
Mordecai eventually agrees to do the solid, and though it's never officially stated on what he has to do, it is heavily implied that Mordecai was made to take a shit in front of everyone whilst making weird noises. No, I'm serious. And if you think I am mad for thinking that, hear me out. Look at the way he's sitting before he starts doing the act, and look at the sheer disgust on everyone's face as they witness whatever he's doing. And don't tell me it was just a weird dance that he has to do, because Mordecai has arguably had to do far worse in his solids throughout the day, and yet this was the one that crossed the line in the sand. Also the phrase, "do me a solid"? Yeah, Mordecai is quite literally doing a solid right there on the floor. And this episode title is no coincidence. I don't know about you guys, but having to do a weird shit in front of your crush and co-workers, I think I'd rather have the universe end. And to make it worse, Rigby is also filming it, and then plays it back to people after, which from what we hear from Mordecai, has been going on for quite some time.
You're watching it again?
This is a new version I edited together.
Mordecai quite rightly says that he's done with Rigby, and that he's a shitty friend. But just as he's about to head off, Rigby pretends that he still owes Mordecai a solid, and so destroys the tape, in which him and Mordecai just head off to the arcade together.
Hey Rigby,
Yeah?
do me a solid and come to the arcade with me?
Okay, I get that Rigby destroyed the tape, but ruining your day, making you take a dump in front of everyone and filming it, and then watching it back repeatedly? Yeah, I'm not sure this quite makes you even.
Equals pequals.
We are not equals pequals.
This episode is just cruel and awkward to watch, and just gives you that constant secondhand embarrassment. You could have made the argument of, well, Mordecai could have just refused to do the solids and ended the date, but as shown at the end of the episode, he literally couldn't. I know Mordecai can be a bit of a cringe simp at times and therefore deserves his punishments, but this was not it. And yeah, Rigby was in full on douche mode this episode, and he gets off scot-free at the end. SpongeBob SquarePants, I'm with Stupid, Season 2, Episode 33. One thing criticised in modern episodes of SpongeBob is Patrick's character development and how he turns into a much more mean-spirited, unlikable friend towards SpongeBob, with fans even dubbing him as either Pat-Prick or Twat-Trick depending on your preference. But funnily enough, elements of this character had actually started to emerge as early on as Season 2, in which I'd say Season 2 Episode 3, Something Smells, is where we first start to see the glimpses of Patrick being more of a douche. However, it's this episode where Patrick really starts to lean into full-on prick mode. In this episode, SpongeBob finds Patrick frantically cleaning his house and constructing furniture.
That's what he calls it.
Patrick tells SpongeBob that his parents are coming to visit, but is panicking because they've always viewed him as a moron. So Patrick really wants to make a good impression on them. SpongeBob comes up with a plan to act like an even bigger moron so that Patrick will look smart in comparison.
What could go wrong?
Patrick's parents arrive, and at the start the plan appears to be working, though Patrick's insults towards SpongeBob begin to grow more and more personal as he insults his clothes and his appearance.
Hey SpongeBob, do you have any mascara I could borrow? The boy wears makeup?
What a card!
SpongeBob goes to have a word with Patrick in the kitchen, but it soon becomes apparent that Patrick has forgotten the plan and now genuinely believes that SpongeBob is an idiot.
Dumb people are always blissfully unaware of how dumb they really are.
SpongeBob tries to reveal to Patrick's parents about the whole plan, but they just think this is all down to Patrick teaching the dummy on how to talk. After continuing to get mocked and jeered, SpongeBob finally loses it and runs out of the house. Which, wait, isn't that the outdoors we're seeing? Isn't Patrick's house supposed to be underground? Though I really shouldn't be questioning the physics of this show as it's obvious they don't exist. The episode ends with Patrick's actual parents suddenly turning up at the door, whilst the other two, Janet and Marty, remember that they don't have a son and simply head off.
Oh, that's right, honey. We don't have a son.
Oh, yeah.
This episode sucks because SpongeBob gets so unfairly treated throughout, despite only having good intentions to help Patrick out during his time of need. And it really just makes Patrick an unlikable character, only made all the worse that he never receives any comeuppance for his shitty behaviour. This episode does have some good jokes in it. I particularly like just how absurd it is that these two forget that they didn't actually have a son and just so casually walk away. But overall, it's an unpleasant viewing experience. So yeah, that was my selection for the worst episodes in otherwise good shows. There were more I had listed down, but I wanted to keep this at 5 episodes just for the video length's sake. But if you would like to see a part 2 of this, please do give this video a like, and feel free to comment any suggestions you think should have been included that I missed out. But until the next one guys, take care.